Hello everyone, it's me, Dakota78. No, I'm not Tina. So, funny story before we actually begin this video. I just thought, I'd wear this whole costume just for the sake of Halloween. Seemed like a good idea, right? Well, kind of. Turns out there's a personality with it. It was Tina. And he made me overconfident, really outgoing, which is the total opposite of how I usually am. However, for the sake of today and for this video, I think I'll wear this. So, we made it. Here it is. Deltarune Chapter 4 in its soundtrack. We are here to finally rate it today. Well, this is going to be part 1. This is obviously going to be a two-parter because there's a lot to talk about today. But before that, I'd like to say a couple of things first. So far, we have covered Chapter 1's original soundtrack, Chapter 2's original soundtrack, and Chapter 3's original soundtrack for Deltarune. And the other thing I noticed, of course, has to do with the quality of my videos. The Chapter 1 videos were kind of a rough start, I would say, this series. There were massive pauses between the tracks. The video itself wasn't in 60 frames, it was in 24. Overall, I think it was fine for lack of, I guess you could call, skill on my end. Chapter 2 was also a bit rough at the start, at least for part 1. Part 2, however, of that video went fantastically. Figured out how to do 60 frames. I was a little more confident. The pauses ceased to exist beyond a 5-second reprieve. Chapter 3, though, is where I believe I've done the most out of all of the other videos so far. In terms of quality, in terms of how outspoken I am, and ultimately it was a lot easier to record. And as of making this video right now, that part 2 of Chapter 3 video has over 150 views. And I want to thank you all so much for watching these videos. If you haven't, I don't know if I would have continued this series. But besides all that, I am proud to announce that today we are doing part 1 of 2 of this Deltarune Chapter 4 original soundtrack rating. Now, one last thing before I'd like to begin. Firstly, of course, is that I do not own none of these tracks. They're owned by Toby Fox, the Deltarune Team, and Materia Collective. The other thing I'd like to briefly discuss is the story of Chapter 4. You see, the events of this chapter are more serious. And that could go for the same about the tonal shift between the energetic Chapter 3 track and Chapter 4 having a much more serious and even depressing soundtrack. And I'll get to that second word later. You see, the entire story has taken a turn at this point. After all, this is the halfway point of Deltarune. And every chapter at this point has actually had a title. And I won't get into that quite yet. However, I do have an important announcement that will be made at the end of this part 1 video. So stay around for that, please. So, what it comes down to, and this is a spoiler alert, by the way. Spoiler alert! Do not want to stress that enough. In this chapter, Chris and Susie are trying to find the code to the shelter, which is this bunker-esque location in hometown. it doesn't really play a big part in the first 3 chapters, but chapter 4 does. That's because the Roaring Knight, whether you win the fight with them or lose against the Roaring Knight, will take Officer Undyne, who has shown up in TV World, and dragging her all the way to the bunker, which is now sealed. So, before Chris and Susie can even think about going around asking for clues, Toriel takes them to Hometown's church. This is where they learn a couple of things. But again, I'm not getting into the story. What I should tell you though is that the track for this chapter in particular, not just one track, the entire soundtrack, is phenomenal. Not saying chapter 3's was bad, no. I'm just saying chapter 4 is probably more unique in a way. A lot of tracks in chapter 3 features Tana's theme or motif throughout. Chapter 4 is different, because your main antagonist isn't really anyone in particular, and if you wanted to give that a title to anybody, it would probably be the Roaring Knight. So, without me blabbering on about this, I think it's finally time, and I am so happy to talk about this today. So, with no further explanation or words from me, let's start part 1 of 2 of rating every single Deltarune Chapter 4 original soundtrack. Old Wooden Rafters plays whenever Chris, Susie, and Toriel enter the church in Hometown. Now, real quickly, the religion that the people in Deltarune believe in is vague. Not a lot is talked about besides that they believe in the story of Deltarune. And that means that this religion could be a direct correlation from the prophecy that Rousey talked about all the way in chapter 1. And it makes sense. The chapter itself is called Prophecy, if I haven't mentioned that earlier. However the case, there is one distinct thing about Old Wooden Rafters: the use of an organ, and that's the only instrument you can hear, making it the first time out of every other track we've listened to up to this point having an organ as an instrument, and it being the only instrument. However, the track itself is really good, and I do enjoy it, and it is a great start to this chapter's soundtrack. So let's listen to it and move on, shall we? Hymn plays during the section where a few of Hometown's residents, including Toriel and Noelle, sing a hymn before the service begins. Now, the hymn itself is interesting, and while there is no words, you can see it in game, and the very last part of it kind of seals my deal about my little theory about the religion that is inside of Deltarune. That last part being, the story of Deltarune. And that, me singing that, of course, matches up with the track itself. It's a bit short, and it was great to just hear a track where we hear a choir. So, let's listen to this and move on out, get through the rest of the service, and explore Hometown for a little bit. Another Day in Hometown plays whenever, excuse me, Chris and Susie go explore hometown after the service and on a day where the school isn't actually having classes. The track itself is really good, and I would argue it's even better than A Town Called Hometown. It's uplifting, it's cheery, it kind of gets you prepared for the very serious story that's about to happen. The track itself is mostly just an extended and remixed version of A Town Called Hometown. Overall though, it is a fantastic track, and it gives you an opportunity to see some of the residents of hometown out and about, and they're getting ready to do this festival. So, people are just everywhere in this specific time of the day. So, let's listen to this and move right on to the next, shall we? Friends plays when Chris and Susie enjoy a meal at the diner in hometown. Now, the track is really good. I do enjoy it. It's nice and calm, just like the other track. However, what it does is show you is that Chris and Susie's relationship is significantly improved from chapter 1. They're friends now. They're enjoying a good meal, it's a nice atmosphere, and the only thing is that this can only be heard if you have the $5 to get the meal between Chris and Susie. Overall, it is a nice track, and it's almost quite heartwarming. So, let's move on to something groovy. Castle Funk plays when you enter Castletown in Chapter 4, as long as you have spared every enemy from Chapters 1 to 3. This track is phenomenal. Take my Castletown and amp it up to 11, or maybe even higher. As a matter of fact, the track itself is groovy, like I just said, but also gives you a chance to see all of the enemies who are no longer enemies and are now on your side, residing in a much more expansive castle town, including Tina. Now, overall, the track is, again, it's phenomenal. I really don't have a lot more to say about it. And it gets even better in the second half of the track. So let's just listen to this, get a little bit groovy, and let's move on to the next. Well, it looks like Christmas has come early this year. The next track is called Gingerbread House, and this plays whenever Chris, Susie, and Noel enter Noel's house, which is huge. It's practically a mansion. Now, the track is screaming at you. Hey, guess what? This is the holiday house. We're going to make you know that we take Christmas very seriously. It utilizes a lot of bells and instruments relating to some of your typical Christmas tracks. And it even has Girl Next Door as a leitmotif. Overall, the track is pretty good, but once you listen to it in a while, it gets a little bit not really uninteresting, but it doesn't have the impact that it does for when you first hear it. So let's move on to something, well, quite disturbing. Maybe that's not the right word either. Regardless, let's just listen to this track and move on. The Distance Between Two plays when you first enter Des Holliday's room inside of Noel's house. That's right, Des Holliday, the person that is still missing. Guess what? We finally get to enter her room. And boy, is it something when you first enter it. And the track itself is a much somber version of Lost Girl, and it makes sense. Because the mystery surrounding Des Holliday at this point is completely up to interpretation. At least until Chapter 5 comes out. But enough about that. The track itself is really good at setting its mood. And overall, it is a fantastic soundtrack, for as short as it is. So let's listen to this and move on to something quite... it's a little cold in here, isn't it? C plays when Carol Holiday, the mayor of hometown and mother of Noel, is first introduced to us. Man, it really is cold. Brr. The track itself is very reminiscent of Breath from Deltarune Chapter 3. Except it's colder. Literally. It sounds like somebody's breathing while freezing to death. The track is okay for a little bit, but it can get a little agitating after listening to it for quite some time. Overall though, it's a very chilling theme, both literally and figuratively speaking. So let's move on and get right into the action for Chapter 4's Dark World. ATRIUM plays at the absolute very beginning of the next Dark World, which was created by the Roaring Night. Now, as you remember me explaining last time, Dark Worlds are created when it gets so dark things do not appear like they seem, making it technically not real at all. Fake is the best way to describe it. And this time it takes place at the church. Now, that probably means somebody turned down all the lights in the church. And we're seeing things way differently than they should. The track itself, however, is a great start to this next world. And overall, it's a phenomenal theme. So let's listen to this and move on to what I consider to be, even up to this early point, one of the best tracks in this chapter so far. Dark Sanctuary plays during the first section of this Dark World. It's also the first of three filled themes. That's right, filled themes have returned, and they are coming back swinging. Now, when I tell you this, next sentence, I do not mean it any way except literal. I love this track. This track is absolutely amazing at setting up the tone. It's fantasy-like. There's a choir going on in the background. The imagery, everything about this part is just beautiful. Beautifully composed. And it shows, and this track just sets up the mood for the entirety of the rest of this chapter. It's also throughout this section while you're hearing this amazing, phenomenal soundtrack that you see weird text on the walls. That is the prophecy. Now, remember that legend Rousey talked about in chapter 1? Guess what? It wasn't meant to be a legend. It was meant to tell you this is going to happen at some point. After all, prophecy is one of those things that will be fulfilled, especially in the world of Deltarune. Overall though, I just cannot describe how much I love this soundtrack. So let's take a wonderful good listen to this and move on to something, oh, it's going to be incredible too. From now on, plays during the regular battles throughout this chapter. Listen, if you thought Root Buster was good, Rooter Buster was wonderful, and Vapor Buster was fantastic, this track single-handedly knocks them out of the park, because this may be the absolute best battle theme we have up to this point. It's phenomenal! It's amazing! It is so perfect for this entire chapter. I love From Now On. It's the one I listen to most frequently too when re-listening to the soundtrack. Sorry about that. I got a little excited because I just love From Now On. And I think you will too. So let's just take a wonderful listen to this and move on to something quite familiar. Gyaa Ha Ha plays when you first meet an old man who has actually saved the team's life inside of this chapter. And it plays during other encounters with the old man as well. Now, when I first saw this, something immediately clicked. Well, two things. First of all, is that Gerson Boom from Undertale? And secondly, this is Undyne's theme from Undertale. The similarities are just right there. And it makes sense. Gerson inspired Undyne and Undertale. Probably did the same in Deltarune. I don't know yet. No one knows. The track itself, however, is absolutely incredible. This does scream at you fantasy. And it utilizes its instrumentation perfectly. Another phenomenal soundtrack by Toby Fox. So let's just listen and move on and maybe try to get this old man somewhere safe, right? Okay, there we go. That's a little bit better. Fireplace plays when you enter the old man's study. Now, instead of saying old man from now on, I'm going to start calling him Gerson. That's who it is. The track itself is just a fireplace. You hear crackling a fire. You hear more fantasy-esque instrumentation throughout. It's just a wonderful soundtrack. It's calm and it's going to prepare you for the mayhem that's going to be happening throughout this chapter. Overall though, I enjoy this track and it fits perfectly for the fantasy-esque theme that has been going on throughout this entire chapter. So let's just take a minute, listen to this, and move on to... Whoa, what's that place over there? It looks kind of dark, actually. We'll investigate that in just a moment. But for now, let's just listen to Fireplace, and then we'll go see what's going on over there. Whoa, it's dark in here. Wait a minute, let me just... There we go. That's a lot better. Speaking of the word dark, a dark zone plays when you're fighting against the mini-boss of Chapter 4, Jackenstein, which is a fusion between a jack-o'-lantern and Frankenstein. And it's quite a clever title, a play on words. The track itself is very Halloween themed. It's ironic in a way, because by the time this video is completely done and uploaded, it's going to be way past Halloween. However the case, it's a really good theme. It's got a good little groove to it. It reminds you a lot of Halloween. Again, as I've said, it features Napster Bluke's motif throughout, which is featured in both Undertale and Deltarune. And there's a lot more I could talk about this track. I mean, we could talk about certain parts of it being a little better than others, and then... You know what? You're right. I am taking too long on this explanation. Overall, this is a fantastic soundtrack, especially for the Halloween season, which is now over. Regardless, let's listen to this and move on, shall we? Mysterious ringing plays when you enter the eastern bell tower that's located to the right of the old man's study. It's okay. The only thing you hear is bells ringing. Not just the small little bells, we're talking the really big ones that you would see in like a bell tower. The track's okay. It's not the best, but it's most certainly not the worst. So let's just take a quick listen to this and move on to something that's really good, shall we? Okay, well, when I said I wanted even better, this isn't exactly what I had in mind. Even higher plays whenever you're climbing in certain areas of Deltarune Chapter 4. What areas? I can't really explain it. It's just a couple of specific areas inside of this dark world. The track itself is okay, and it's actually a precursor to a track later on, which is actually better than this. However the case, the track itself is pretty good. I would say it's a little difficult to talk about. It has a good crescendo, it keeps building up throughout. Overall, the soundtrack itself is okay. And probably better say it's pretty good. So let's just listen to the rest of this and move on to something a little bit wise. Wise Words plays when the old man, aka Gerson, is having personal one-to-one interactions with Susie. This track is absolutely incredible. I do enjoy this track. It's similar to Gerson's own motif, but overall though, what I like about this is the specific scenes that it plays in, such as one specific example being that Susie tells Gerson that you teaching me actually makes me feel less stupid. And Susie, throughout the game, has often undersold her own abilities. This is a really good moment. And of course, Gerson encouraging her to keep on trying her healing magic, even though she doesn't want to, which actually comes out helpful in the end, especially because Susie's the one to actually heal Jackenstein after the end of that battle. Ultimately, though, I do love Wise Words, and it's a fantastic soundtrack. And with that, we only have 2 more tracks to get through before the end of this first part. So let's listen to this, take these words of wisdom, and move on, shall we? Let me make sure I read this second to last track correctly. Okay. Piano that may not be played that well plays when Chris plays this gigantic piano in order to open up the door to get to where the knight is. Now, the track itself is very good, and you can tell that Toby put a lot of love and appreciation during this specific scene. It also shows us a moment in time in which Chris is the one taking control and not us, the player. And it shows that, yes, Chris is very skilled at piano. And while you can see Chris playing piano during the section where you're at Noel's house trying to find out clues, it's still going to fact that this track is well done. And as a matter of fact, it's quite reminiscent of Him, which we talked about way earlier in this video. So why don't we just sit here and listen to what Chris has to play for us. Hammer of Justice plays when you're fighting against the secret boss of Deltarune Chapter 4, Gerson? That's right, and Susie's the only one that is fighting him, but it's more like a spar. Now, this is one of the tracks I have been so excited to talk about since I started this series, because it is absolutely incredible. The use of old-timey instruments, and especially the amazing use of the banjo. And when it gets to that middle part of that song, I mean, the track is just absolutely incredible. It's powerful. You see Gerson and Susie going at it, all for a pretty bad weapon. Overall though, the track itself, I'm just telling you, when that one part hits, it's beautiful. It's incredible. So, without anything else from me talking about it, let's sit back and listen to this absolutely incredible Secret Boss track, shall we? Well, there you go. That's the end of part number 1. Part 2 will be out quite soon. However, as you can tell with this video, I put in quite a bit more energy into talking about these tracks. Because again, Chapter 4 is an absolutely incredible soundtrack. And the fact of the matter is that in part 2, you may actually see for the first time in any of these videos while discussing it, me crying. Because the second half of this track has some heart-tugging See, I don't even want to talk about it. Because that'll be saved for part number 2. However, I do want to say this. Thank you so much for your support of this series. And I cannot wait for part number 2. Because that's going to be the one that I'm most excited for. And I was excited to do the other chapters as well, but this next section, this second part, is going to have just a moment in it that, well, you'll be surprised about. Now, before I end this video, I want to make a very important announcement. In my part 2 of chapter 3 video, I talked a little bit about talking about all of Deltarune's roots. Well, I'm here to make a wonderful announcement today for you all. Because soon coming up, I will be covering the entirety of Deltarune's pacifist route. That's right, the entire thing, documentary formatted. Of course, they'll probably be in the 2 parts as well because we've got 4 chapters to go over. But it'll just be 2 parts. You see, in a lot of these talks about the soundtrack, I talk about the story a little bit. When these videos come out, they'll really take a deeper dive into the story. And I know there's plenty of YouTubers out there that have talked about the different routes. But as a smaller YouTuber, I would love to be able to just take the time, talk much more in depth about the story, and give you my personal takes about certain things that happen within the story. Further announcements on that will be made quite soon, and overall though, I hope you're excited for when that comes out. That's going to be another big project. And with that being said, of course, a bigger project means it's going to take me more time. So after this chapter, this part 2 of chapter 4 original soundtrack rating, I'm probably going to take about 2 weeks off from Deltarune content. But who knows? But when it comes down to it ultimately, there's really only one thing I can say. That I am glad that you have patience with these tons of videos. They take a lot of time. They really do. Now, enough of that. I hope you all enjoyed this video. And one last thing. There are a couple of review soundtracks. I'll put those in the description. So with all that being said, I'll see you on part 2. This is Dakota78 signing off. Thank you again.